Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. A shooting yesterday at YouTube's headquarters in California wounded 3 people but left only the shooter dead. The killer was an Iranian refugee named Nassim Aghdam. Apparently, Aghdam believed that YouTube's content policies had somehow sabotaged her efforts to become a digital video star. Enraged, she drove to the company's headquarters and opened fire. That's what we know. Now let's pause for a moment and pretend this is not the 8 p.m. show on Fox News. Let's pretend it's somewhere else on the dial, maybe CNN or MSNBC or actually any other cable channel or newspaper in America. If that were true, by definition, we'd have to draw hard and fast conclusions from this tragedy using the limited fact set available. We don't really know much at this stage, but sweeping dumb generalizations are what the media do, so we would do that. And of course, we'd need a very specific script in order to make those generalizations. So what do we conclude from what happened yesterday? Well, first off, the shooter was a woman. She was female. So clearly, America has a problem with toxic femininity. And we need to address that crisis right away, starting with more university panel shaming an entire gender. Somebody alert the HR department to this. And then there's the gun. We'd focus relentlessly on the gun because nothing is more pivotal in a shooting than the weapon that was used. It's always the gun's fault, always. The shooter in this case used a Smith & Wesson 9mm handgun. Those guns need to be banned tomorrow, along with all other assault pistols. And if you disagree with that, you're evil. Next, the shooter was a vegan and a supporter of PETA. Therefore, PETA is now a terrorist organization. Anyone who supports PETA, even those supporters who disapprove of mass shootings, is a monster and has blood on his hands. Let's hope that CNN hosts a town hall meeting where YouTube employees can scream at PETA spokesmen. They deserve to be screamed at. They caused the shooting. But wait, media outlets aren't reaching any of those conclusions. Why not? Well, because there's no obvious way to use this shooting to advance the objectives of the Democratic Party. So the media will stop talking about it soon. That's how corrupt they are. They're also incredibly stupid, especially on the subject of firearms. The people yelling at you about guns on television aren't sure what end the bullet comes out of. They're kids, they're children, with all the ignorance and moral certainty of 5th graders. We could show you a million examples of that because they're everywhere. But here's the most amusing one we've seen recently. It happened yesterday. This is MSNBC's resident genius Nicole Wallace mistaking the opening of a soda can for gunfire. Watch.
Steve Schmidt, I always go back to the horror of 9/11 and the complete reliance. You know, we are in our tribes, we're in our corners most of our lives. I think we just heard some gunshots. Should we listen to that for a second? Control room? Is that not gunshots? Okay.
Not gunshots? No, Nicole, not gunshots. Pretty funny. But be certain to listen very carefully as she lectures you about the Second Amendment, because she knows a lot about it. Pete Hegseth is Fox & Friends weekend host. He's a former member of the U.S. military, a decorated one, and he joins us tonight. So, Pete, it's a pretty simple question. We kind of know the script. We know the way these things unfold, how they're analyzed in the press. We draw sweeping conclusions from a pretty limited set of facts. You're not hearing that tonight. You're not hearing the other channels say toxic femininity is a threat to America. Why is that?
Well, of course you're not. Wrong bad guy, Tucker. Wrong bad guy. Female of Iranian descent. She's a fitness buff. She's a vegan. She's a PETA member. Not an NRA member. Not a Trump supporter. Not a member of the NRA. And as a result, doesn't fit the very convenient narrative. And as a result, it's silence, Tucker. I mean, it is NBC, CBS, negligent coverage. ABC, glancing blow. NBC said she's apparently an animal rights activist. They're moving away from this as quickly as they can with almost imagine if it was an NRA member that did this. Is he apparently an NRA member or is he actually an NRA member? In this case, apparently an animal rights activist. But no judgment or blood on the hands of a PETA member, always blood on the hands of an NRA member, because it would be absurd to me to define an entire population as violent because they believe in animal rights, just like it's absurd to believe an entire population of Second Amendment supporters believes in violence because they support our rights.
So I'm a little confused here. So what you're suggesting, and my producer just said in my ear, he's watching the other channels, none of them are covering this right now, that the coverage of gun crimes really isn't an effort to reduce the number of gun crimes. It's an effort to make a series of partisan points? Is that what you're saying?
It's an effort to impugn the Second Amendment and those those who support it, Tucker. I mean, ultimately, it all depends on the labels that apply. You know this, identity politics are one-sided. If you, a white Christian male who voted for Donald Trump and believe in the Second Amendment, who owns an AR-15, then you must have a proclivity to violence. But you are a female of any other shade who owns a handgun and supports animals, and you commit violence. Nothing to see here. Turn the channel. Good Morning America, as they did this morning, will not even cover this shooting, and won't draw a larger narrative as a result. Again, apparently an animal rights activist. This is what the modern media has turned into, cheerleading for a cause, which is taking away our guns, which is exactly what we know they want to do, as opposed to reporting the news and then moving on if it's not relevant.
It doesn't sound like journalism. It does seem to me that it crosses a line when it moves from attacking the president personally. They don't like Trump. I get it. He doesn't like them, by the way.
Sure.
But from that, which you could sort of understand, you probably shouldn't do it, but I get it, to moving over to advocating for specific policies that affect 320 million Americans as if there's only one side of the debate. It moves from childish annoyance to full-on propaganda.
Of course.
Doesn't it?
I've heard journalists on other networks say it is our obligation to continue to talk about the Parkland shooting because we owe it to the American people to keep the conversation alive. If we don't talk about it, the conversation doesn't continue and policies don't change in Washington, D.C. If that doesn't sound like activism, I don't know what is. I mean, it's your job to report the news that is relevant, and a mass shooting is, of course, relevant. You cover it, and then you move on as necessary. But they're deciding what to cover and dwell on to try to change
That's
policy.
right. But what's so striking is, I mean, if you were going to pick a topic that the media would lobby on, maybe camera angles or lighting, they sort of make up. I mean, they're experts on that stuff. But is there any group in America that knows less about firearms? Nicole Wallace mistook a soda opening for gunshots.
I opened my my Diet Mountain Dew, which I happen to like, and no one around here jumped and thought it was an AR-15, let alone a 9mm. I mean, I need Diet Mountain Dew because I'm up at 6 in the morning like you used to be. It keeps us awake, but I've never mistaken, nor anyone I know would mistake that as gunfire. They know nothing, Tucker. How many members of this media are members of the NRA? How many of them have ever fired an AR-15, let alone an M4, which I carried, let alone a 249 squad automatic weapon? They don't know a squad automatic weapon from a BB gun. Yet they're going to tell me what I can or cannot carry. Of course it's political activism to help their Democratic buddies. They're in the tank. It's not convenient. They're not going to cover it.
Who put all the dumb people on TV? I always ask myself that. Pete, it's great to see you. You're not one of them. And I appreciate your coming on tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.